In 1957, America fell in love with Leave It to Beaver, but almost no one saw the vanished pilot that nearly derailed the series before it began. The official story is all wholesome nostalgia, yet buried in studio vaults, lost scripts, and an unprecedented network leap lies a tale of 20th century TV daring and survival. These are 20 shocking secrets that reveal the Cleaver family's world wasn't as simple or as safe as it seemed. So what really happened behind television's most iconic picket fence? On April 23, 1957, an episode titled It's a Small World quietly aired on the anthology series Studio 57. This was not yet Leave It to Beaver, as the world would come to know it. Instead, it was a test run, one with unfamiliar faces in familiar roles. Ward Cleaver, for instance, was played by Max Showalter, credited as Casey Adams, while Wally was portrayed by Paul Sullivan. Only Jerry Mathers, already cast as Beaver, would go on to anchor the series. The script revolved around a simple childhood scheme involving bicycle parts and bottle caps. Yet the chemistry was still in its early stages. After this single broadcast, the pilot vanished from public view. It never entered syndication, never re-aired, and for decades, even die-hard fans doubted its existence. The original film print went missing, its whereabouts unlisted in any studio archive. For years, the pilot became television folklore, a lost artifact from the dawn of suburban sitcoms. Decades later, the mystery unraveled in the most unexpected place, a film vault in Illinois. The print, either a kinescope or original film stock, had survived, tucked away and nearly forgotten. No studio paperwork or deposit records have ever surfaced to explain how it ended up there, or who made the decision to store it rather than destroy it. But the episode was intact, its alternate cast frozen in time. In 1987, the rediscovered pilot was finally broadcast again, this time as a special episode on TBS, with Jerry Mathers and other original cast members introducing the rare find. For the first time, viewers could compare the early version with the series that followed. Later, the pilot appeared as a bonus feature on Universal's 2005 DVD release, allowing a new generation to glimpse the show's origins. The story of It's a Small World is a reminder of how fragile television history can be. Scripts, performances, even entire episodes can slip through the cracks, only to resurface decades later. What began as a one-off experiment became the unlikely foundation for one of America's most enduring family sitcoms. Leave It to Beaver debuted on CBS in October 1957, but its future was anything but certain. The first season brought modest ratings and a challenging time slot, bouncing between Friday and Saturday evenings. By spring, CBS decided not to renew the show, a move that could have ended its story before it truly began. Instead, the series found an unexpected lifeline. A BC seeking to bolster its own family programming picked up Leave It to Beaver for the fall of 1958. This network shift was far from routine. A BC placed its faith in the Cleaver family, moving the show to Thursday nights, then later to Wednesdays, and even Fridays, testing different time slots across 6 seasons. Despite the instability, the show built a steady following. Over its run from 1957 to 1963, Leave It to Beaver produced a remarkable 234 episodes, all filmed in black and white. This extensive catalog became a key asset in the era of syndication, allowing the series to air daily on local stations long after its original run. The show's ability to adapt, surviving a network change, frequent schedule moves, and early ratings uncertainty, demonstrated a quiet resilience. Each episode, whether broadcast on CBS or ABC, contributed to a growing archive that would define the look and feel of American suburbia for decades. The decision to keep the series alive, despite its rocky start, reflected a growing institutional belief in its value. The Cleaver family's gentle humor and moral lessons resonated with viewers, even as the show navigated the shifting landscape of network television. The journey from a single-season gamble to a six-season staple laid the groundwork for the creative risks and production innovations that would soon follow. Network censors in the 1950s wielded quiet authority over what Americans saw in their living rooms, but few battles were as oddly memorable as the one over a toilet tank. The first episode produced for Leave It to Beaver, titled Captain Jack, featured Wally and Beaver scheming to hide a baby alligator in the family bathroom. The script called for a scene with the boys opening the lid of a toilet tank, a moment so mundane today yet so forbidden then, it brought production to a standstill. At the time, no American television show had ever displayed a toilet, let alone acknowledged its existence. The Standards and Practices Department at CBS flagged the footage immediately. Internal memos flew between producers and executives, debating whether showing even the back of the tank would cross a line. The compromise: the camera would capture only the tank, never the bowl, and only as absolutely necessary for the plot. This minor concession still proved too much for some at the network. As a result, Captain Jack, intended as the series premiere, was pulled from the schedule and replaced at the last minute by Beaver Gets Spelled, which aired on October 4, 1957. Captain Jack finally reached audiences 1 week later, on October 11th, after censors relented. The episode's delayed airing became a whispered legend among cast and crew, a reminder of how a single shot of porcelain could upend a network's plans. In the end, the alligator in the tank did more than drive a plot. It quietly shifted the boundaries of what could be shown on television, one flush at a time. Leave It to Beaver didn't sound or look like other sitcoms of its day, and that was no accident. The show was filmed using a single camera setup, capturing scenes on 35mm film rather than videotape. This method, borrowed from feature films, allowed for a quieter, more intimate style. No laugh track, no studio audience, just the natural rhythm of a suburban family. Dialogue played out in real time, with pauses and silences that felt closer to real life than the punchy, joke-driven pace of other comedies. Barbara Billingsley's signature pearls, now a symbol of 1950s motherhood, were first added for a practical reason. Studio lights cast shadows on her neck, and the string of pearls helped bounce light back onto her face, evening out the picture for black and white film. Over time, the pearls became so associated with June Cleaver that Billingsley wore them in nearly every episode, even after the original lighting problem was solved. Hugh Beaumont, best known as Ward Cleaver, took his role further by stepping behind the camera to direct several episodes. His understanding of the show's gentle, moral tone shaped not just his performance, but the atmosphere on set. Beaumont's direction focused on small, believable moments between characters, reinforcing the show's emphasis on honesty and kindness. The Cleaver home, so familiar to viewers, was actually a backlot facade. Universal's production team redressed the set as needed, using the same house for other series and films. This blend of craft and thrift was typical of the era, but it gave the Cleaver household a timeless, almost mythic quality. Every detail, from camera angles to costume choices, was designed to make the world of Beaver feel lived in and real. Jerry Mathers was only 8 years old when he walked into the casting office that would change his life. Instead of reciting lines or flashing a practiced smile, he arrived in his Cub Scout uniform, quietly explaining to the producers that he needed to hurry. He had a troop meeting to attend. The blunt honesty and matter-of-fact charm caught the casting team off guard. Rather than seeing a rehearsed child actor, they saw the real kid they wanted for Beaver Cleaver. Memos from the Time note how Mathers' unfiltered approach set him apart from the hundreds of other hopefuls. He wasn't trying to please anyone, and that, ironically, made him the perfect fit for a character built on innocence and sincerity. Casting for Wally, Beaver's older brother, followed a more traditional route, but even here, the process was shaped by unexpected turns. Tony Dow, who would become the steady, athletic Wally, had little acting experience, but a background as a junior diving champion. His natural confidence and physicality came through in his audition, giving the character a believability that producers knew would resonate with audiences. Dow's athleticism later shaped the scripts, with Wally often taking on the role of the capable, protective sibling. One of the show's most memorable characters, Eddie Haskell, started as an inside joke. Writers modeled Eddie's two-faced politeness on a real childhood acquaintance, someone who could charm every adult in the room while causing trouble the moment backs were turned. Ken Osmond, who landed the part, leaned into this duality, giving Eddie a sly grin and syrupy voice that became legendary. The character's DNA was so specific that the term Eddie Haskell entered American slang as shorthand for a certain kind of troublemaker. But not every casting story had a happy ending. Rusty Stevens, who played Beaver's best friend Larry Mondello, left the series midway through its run. Family circumstances forced the departure, and the writing team was suddenly faced with a gap in Beaver's world. Scripts had to be rewritten and new friends introduced, each one attempting to fill the void left by Larry's exit. Behind the scenes, the writer's room became a workshop in flexibility, finding ways to keep the show's sense of childhood camaraderie alive, despite shifting faces in the cast. These casting choices and adjustments didn't just shape the chemistry on screen, they gave the series its ability to adapt. Whether by accident or careful observation, the people behind Leave It to Beaver found authenticity in the quirks and surprises of real life, turning them into the building blocks of a television classic. Rumors have always swirled around the cast of Leave It to Beaver, sometimes blurring the line between fact and fiction. Jerry Mathers, the face of Ward Cleaver, became the subject of one of television's most persistent urban legends. For years, stories circulated that Mathers had died in Vietnam. The truth was far less dramatic, but no less honorable. Mathers served in the Air Force Reserve during the late 1960s, stateside, never seeing combat. He returned to civilian life, carrying with him the weight of a rumor that refused to fade, even as he appeared on talk shows and reunion specials to set the record straight. Ken Osmond, known to millions as the scheming Eddie Haskell, left Hollywood behind for a very different kind of service. In 1970, Osmond joined the Los Angeles Police Department, working as a motorcycle officer. His new career quickly tested him in ways the studio never could. In 1980, during a traffic stop in North Hollywood, Osmond was shot 3 times by a suspected car thief. Only his bulletproof vest and a metal badge clipped to his chest saved his life. The incident made headlines, and for a time, Osmond's real-life courage became as talked about as his fictional mischief. He continued to serve on the force until his retirement, quietly upending the expectation that child stars fade into obscurity or scandal. Tony Dow, who played Ward Cleaver, also found his path outside the glare of sitcom fame. In adulthood, Dow turned to sculpture, channeling his creativity into abstract works cast in bronze and wood. His art gained international recognition, with pieces exhibited at the Société Nationale des Beaux-Arts at the Carrousel du Louvre in Paris. Dow's steady hand and quiet focus, first seen on screen, found a new audience in galleries and museums, proving that early fame need not define a lifetime. Barbara Billingsley, forever remembered as June Cleaver, surprised a new generation with a single, unforgettable scene in the 1980 comedy Airplane. Clad in pearls and a prim dress, she delivered lines in fluent jive, sending up her wholesome TV persona and earning a place in film history. The cameo became a touchstone for fans who delighted in seeing Billingsley poke fun at her own image decades after the Cleaver kitchen faded to black. Behind the tidy lawns and gentle lessons, the cast lived lives that defied the show's simple, suburban script. Their stories, some tragic, some triumphant, add depth to the legacy of Leave It to Beaver, reminding viewers that the world beyond the soundstage was never quite as predictable as the one on screen. Residual payments for Leave It to Beaver were set long before television reruns became a goldmine. Under 1950s contracts, cast members received a flat fee for the first network repeat, often just an extra day's pay. After that, no matter how many times the show aired in syndication, no further money changed hands. Studios and producers retained nearly all the long-term profits, a business model that left most actors with only modest returns from the show's enduring popularity. Syndication brought Beaver to new generations, but the financial windfall landed elsewhere. By the early 1980s, nostalgia for the Cleaver family was strong enough to spark a revival. In 1983, the original cast reunited for a made-for-TV movie, Still the Beaver. The film's success led to the new Leave It to Beaver, a series that ran first on the Disney Channel and later on TBS. This new chapter allowed Jerry Mathers, Tony Dow, and Ken Osmond to revisit their roles as adults, blending old storylines with contemporary themes. The revival's business model reflected changing times. Contracts now included improved residuals, and cable networks saw value in mining classic brands. For the cast, the return offered both a creative homecoming and a rare chance to benefit from the show's lasting appeal. Studio archives for Leave It to Beaver hold their own mysteries. Despite decades of research, no public record has surfaced documenting the official chain of custody for the original pilot. It's a small world. The Illinois Film Vault, where the print was discovered, has never been formally identified, and neither Universal nor any predecessor studio has released paperwork explaining how or when the episode was consigned to storage. Requests for production logs, deposit slips, or studio memos related to the pilot's disappearance have yielded no results. Even the nature of the recovered print, whether it was a kinescope or original film stock, remains a matter of speculation among television historians. The standards and practices memos that once dictated what could or could not be shown on screen, including the infamous toilet tank debate, are also absent from public view. Microfilm research and archive requests have yet to turn up the internal correspondence that shaped some of the show's most famous moments. These missing documents leave gaps in the historical record, challenging anyone seeking a full account of the show's early years. For every episode preserved on DVD, there are unanswered questions filed away in forgotten boxes, their details still waiting to be found. Between 1957 and 1963, Leave It to Beaver aired 234 episodes, each filmed in black and white and produced under tight studio controls. From the long-lost pilot, It's a Small World, to the censorship controversy over a simple toilet tank, the show quietly reshaped television's boundaries. Behind the scenes, practical choices, like Barbara Billingsley's pearls for better lighting, became cultural icons, and cast members like Ken Osmond went on to lives as varied as serving in the LAPD. Yet some records, such as full censorship memos and financial contracts, remain missing or incomplete. Today, modest original residuals reveal just how much the business has evolved, while syndication and revivals keep the Cleaver legacy alive for new generations. The gaps in the archival record remind us that even the most familiar shows hold mysteries. What survives, on screen and in documents, proves that small innovations can have a lasting national impact.
People who were around back then may recall the 4th of October 1957, when the Soviet Union launched Sputnik 1, the first artificial satellite. That was a huge milestone and a really big deal, but on that very same day, something else was happening. A brand new family sitcom called Leave It to Beaver was hitting the airwaves. Despite all the buzz about space, this little show managed to make a big impact on American culture for a solid 6 years. You might think everything was perfect behind the scenes, but that's not quite the case, as you're about to find out. The fake bee scene. Back in the day, before the advent of computer-generated imagery, CGI. Practical effects were the go-to method for creating visual effects in television shows. Unlike today, where CGI can seamlessly insert objects like bees into shots, TV producers had to rely on ingenuity and creativity to achieve their desired effects. In the episode titled The Silent Treatment, there's a memorable scene where Beaver is painting a door outdoors. Suddenly, a bee starts buzzing around his head, causing a moment of panic. Of course, using a real bee was out of the question for safety reasons and practicality. Instead, the production team had to come up with a clever solution: a fake bee attached to a string. If you pay close attention to the scene, you can spot the telltale sign of the practical effect: the string attached to the fake bee bouncing around Beaver's face.
Beat it, you stupid bee.
Despite the limitations of the technology available at the time, the scene effectively conveys the comedic moment and adds to the charm of the show. This reliance on practical effects highlights the resourcefulness of television producers in the past, who had to find creative ways to bring their stories to life within the constraints of their time and technology. While CGI has revolutionized visual effects in modern television, there's a nostalgic charm to the practical effects of yesteryear, reminding us of the ingenuity and craftsmanship of TV production in earlier eras. The wrong car tow. In the episode titled The Parking Attendants of Leave It to Beaver, Wally and Eddie find themselves in a sticky situation as they take on the roles of valets for an event. As the boys navigate their newfound responsibilities, Eddie makes a critical error. He parks a car, supposedly belonging to Mr. Rutherford, in a tow zone. This misstep sets off a chain of events that leads to the car being towed later in the episode. What's particularly intriguing about this scenario is the revelation that the car with the towed license plate bears an uncanny resemblance to the vehicle frequently seen parked in the Cleavers' driveway during the show's opening credits. This realization prompts speculation among viewers. Unless there's some off-screen car theft occurring, it appears that the show's creators were hoping audiences wouldn't catch on to the discrepancy. This subtle inconsistency raises questions about the production choices behind the scenes. Was it a deliberate decision to reuse the same license plate for convenience, or was it simply an oversight that slipped past the scrutiny of the production team? Regardless of the answer, it adds an interesting layer of intrigue to the episode and invites viewers to engage in a bit of detective work of their own. Furthermore, this discrepancy simply shows the valid limitations faced by television productions of the time. With budgetary constraints and technical limitations, TV shows often had to find creative solutions to logistical challenges. In this case, the reuse of the license plate may have been a practical choice to save time and resources, even if it meant sacrificing a bit of continuity. Overall, the curious case of the matching license plates in The Parking Attendants offers a fascinating glimpse into the behind-the-scenes workings of classic television production. Keeping the black and white. Leave It to Beaver embarked on its television journey in the classic era of black and white television, much like many other shows of its time. However, as the late 1950s ushered in the era of color television, some similar family-oriented programs made the switch to color to appear more contemporary. Amidst this technological shift, Leave It to Beaver faced a critical decision: whether to transition to color or remain in black and white. Despite the growing popularity of color TV, the producers opted to stay true to the show's roots and continue filming in black and white. Their decision was rooted in practical considerations. Transitioning to color required substantial financial investment, including expensive cameras, lighting equipment, and alterations to sets and costumes. These additional expenses would significantly inflate the production budget, potentially compromising other essential aspects of the show's quality. Moreover, the producers valued substance over style. They believed that the heart of Leave It to Beaver lay in its compelling scripts and genuine performances rather than flashy visuals. Embracing the classic feel of black and white, they remained committed to preserving the show's unique charm and authenticity. Ultimately, Leave It to Beaver remained in black and white throughout its entire run, defying the trend towards color television. This deliberate choice not only honored the show's nostalgic appeal, but also ensured its enduring legacy as a beloved classic sitcom. The record player mistake. In the episode The Party Spoiler of Leave It to Beaver, Beaver finds himself feeling left out during a party thrown by his brother Wally. In an attempt to inject some excitement into the gathering, Beaver resorts to playing pranks, culminating in a grand finale prank involving an interrupter planted on the record player. The interrupter, ingeniously placed by Beaver in the plug of the record player, is intended to start and stop the music intermittently, effectively sabotaging the dance party. While the concept of the prank is clever and adds a comedic twist to the episode, it also highlights a minor technical inaccuracy that would have likely amused record enthusiasts of the time. In the scene, the music stops and starts abruptly in sync with Beaver's prank, suggesting that the interrupter works by cutting off the power source to the record player. However, this portrayal overlooks a key aspect of record player mechanics from that era. In reality, record players of the time required a brief period for the turntable's belt to adjust and bring the record up to the correct speed after being powered on or off. While the instantaneous effect of the interrupter adds comedic flair to the episode, it does require viewers to suspend their disbelief and overlook the technicalities of record player operation. Real world versus fiction. On the show, it appeared that the producers didn't know how to create a balance with what was real and what was fiction. While on the one hand, they tried to sprinkle some realistic things in the film, other times they made some grave mistakes. Fast forward to 1963 in the episode called The Poor Loser. In one scene, June Cleaver is looking at a calendar in the kitchen, only there's a little oversight. The calendar shows the wrong year. Instead of 1963 when the movie was set, it says 1961. Turns out the folks in charge of props forgot to update it. But that's not the only slip-up in Mayfield Town. Remember Wally and Beaver? Well, at the start of the show, Wally's 12 and Beaver's almost 8, making them 4 years apart. But by the final season, Wally's aged 5 years while Beaver stays the same age at 14. Something's not adding up there, right? It seems like there was a little mix-up with the calendar, throwing off the Cleaver boys' ages. But let's not forget about Eddie. In another episode, he tries to sound all smart, talking about this book called 2 Years Before Charles Dana Wrote the Mast.
I wonder if you're familiar with 2 Years Before the Mast. It's a book by Charles Dana.
The only problem? He got the name half wrong. The book was written by Richard Henry Dana Jr., contrary to what he called it. But in the end, these little slip-ups just make the show even more interesting. Despite its perfect suburban setting, Leave It to Beaver always managed to throw in some real-life quirks. Turns out, the folks who wrote the scripts, Joe Connolly and Bob Mosher, got a lot of their ideas from their own childhoods. And even Barbara Billingsley, who played June Cleaver, sometimes gave advice based on her own experience raising kids. Another thing most fans may not realize is that the guy who played Ward Cleaver, Hugh Beaumont, wasn't just an actor. He was a real minister in the Methodist Church. His work as a minister gave him a whole lot of wisdom and honesty to bring to the character of Ward Cleaver, making him seem even more believable. There's no doubt that in the behind-the-scenes of Leave It to Beaver, there were bloopers, mix-ups, and real-life inspirations that made the show what it was. While these mistakes seem horrible, it didn't do much to destroy the veracity of the show, and that's a good thing, but there is more coming. And this one has to do with the name of the show. Confusion with name of show. When it came to picking the main actors for a famous show like Leave It to Beaver, it was a big deal. They needed to find kids who could act like regular American boys in a genuine and friendly way. One of the kids who caught the eye of the producers was Jerry Mathers. When young Jerry tried out for the part of Theodore Beaver Cleaver, he really impressed the people in charge. He seemed really honest and true to himself. Jerry was more worried about getting to his Cub Scout meeting on time than about the audition. He even wore his Cub Scout uniform to the audition to make sure he could go straight to the meeting afterward. This honesty and commitment to his role helped Jerry become the famous Beaver Cleaver. He won over the viewers with his real acting of childhood innocence. When asked about his uniform, Jerry calmly explained that he might be late for his scouting meeting if the audition took too long. He seemed more excited about attending the meeting than getting the acting part. But it was exactly this honest charm, innocence, and honesty that made the people in charge realize they had found the perfect young actor for the role of Beaver. Jerry's honesty and genuine nature were the perfect representation of childhood. He didn't try to impress the adults or act fake. He was just being himself, and that's exactly what the role needed. But that's not all. While the folks behind the scenes were trying to come up with a name for the new TV show, they had lots of ideas. Leave It to Beaver wasn't always the first choice. At first, the creators, Joe Connolly and Bob Mosher, thought about calling it Wall-E and the Beaver. This name focused on the two Cleaver brothers, with Wall-E being the older one and the Beaver being the younger one who's naughty but cute. But when the first episode aired on TV, everyone loved Jerry Mathers playing the Beaver. His funny and innocent character became the show's heart. So they stuck with Leave It to Beaver as the name. When they saw how people reacted to the first episode, the producers realized that the main character, Beaver, was the show's real star. The name Wall-E and the Beaver didn't feel right anymore because Beaver was becoming the most important character. They needed a new name that showed Beaver was the star and that the show was all about his fun, funny adventures. So after trying out a few options, they decided on Leave It to Beaver, which showed the funny side of the show that was yet to come. Before it became its own show, the first episode of Leave It to Beaver was shown on TV as part of a series called Hind Studio 57. These kinds of shows usually have a different story and characters in each episode, like The Twilight Zone or Alfred Hitchcock Presents. In the summer of 1957, Hind Studio 57 aired many pilot episodes of possible new shows to see which ones people liked. Leave It to Beaver's first episode, It's a Small World, was one of these trial episodes, shown on April 23, 1957. Back then, the Cleaver family in the town of Mayfield was just another idea for a TV show among many others on Studio 57. The pilot introduced viewers to the Cleaver family, including young actors Jerry Mathers and Tony Dow. While the main idea of the show was similar to what Leave It to Beaver later became, there were some differences. The name It's a Small World hinted at seeing small-town life through a child's eyes, but the characters and their relationships weren't fully developed yet. Even Harry Shearer, who became famous on The Simpsons, had a small part in the pilot. After the pilot aired, TV executives decided Beaver's adventures were worth turning into a full series, and the rest is history. So, while today we know Leave It to Beaver as its own show, it actually started as a short episode on Hind Studio 57. TV producers could see its potential from the beginning. Barbara's attempt at being taller. Barbara Billingsley, known for her role as the perfect TV mom, June Cleaver, on Leave It to Beaver, always had a polished appearance. Her neat dresses, pearl necklaces, and impeccably styled hair represented the typical suburban mom of the 1950s. However, her fashion choices served a practical purpose too. As the show progressed over its 6 seasons, Barbara faced a dilemma. Her on-screen sons, Jerry Mathers and Tony Dow, were growing taller. She didn't want to appear shorter than them on camera as they got bigger. To address this, Barbara started wearing higher heels. Instead of trying to hide their growth, which wouldn't look authentic, she cleverly used fashion to maintain her height advantage. By opting for tall heels, she maintained the appearance of a mom, even as her TV sons grew up. Sometimes Barbara also stood on a small platform to gain a few extra inches. However, it was mostly her choice of high heels that kept her looking taller than her co-stars. This smart fashion decision ensured continuity in the family dynamic on screen, maintaining the believability of their relationships throughout the show. Also, a lot of fans of the show may have missed this. The toilet scene. Back in 1957, television was a different landscape, and certain topics were considered taboo. One such topic was the depiction of toilets on TV screens. It was seen as rude and inappropriate, something that just wasn't done. However, In the second episode of Leave It to Beaver, titled Captain Jack, the show challenged this norm in a groundbreaking way. Wall-E and Beaver found themselves in a humorous dilemma when they unexpectedly acquired an alligator and needed to find a place to hide it. In their youthful ingenuity, they settled on the most unconventional hiding spot, the toilet tank. At the time, this solution might seem odd, but it was a testament to the creative storytelling of the show. However, including a toilet scene wasn't without its challenges. CBS, the TV network airing the show, was initially hesitant about showcasing such a scene. They were concerned about the potential backlash from viewers. The show's creators, though, argued that there was no other practical place to hide the alligator within the context of the story. After some negotiation, CBS reluctantly agreed to allow the scene, but with certain conditions. They agreed to show the toilet tank, but made it clear that the bowl itself should not be visible. Thus, in a quick and cleverly shot scene, Wall-E is depicted placing the alligator in the tank. While only the top half of the toilet was shown, it marked a significant departure from the norms of television at the time. Leave It to Beaver's bold move paid off, as it became the first show to feature an actual toilet on TV, albeit partially. This moment was groundbreaking, opening the door for more lighthearted bathroom-related humor and scenes in television shows to come. It paved the way for the toilet humor that we often see and enjoy in shows today, demonstrating the show's lasting impact on television culture. Chuckle, don't laugh. The minds behind Leave It to Beaver had a unique approach to humor. Instead of aiming for uproarious laughter, they sought to cultivate a more subtle and natural form of comedy. If a joke elicited an overwhelmingly strong reaction from the audience during filming, it would likely find itself on the cutting room floor before the final edit. The goal was to maintain the warm and genuine ambiance that characterized the Cleaver family's escapades each week. The producers believed that excessive laughter could potentially disrupt the show's innocent and straightforward tone. Therefore, they meticulously reviewed each joke after filming, opting to preserve those that elicited small chuckles rather than uproarious guffaws. Tony Dow, who portrayed Ward Cleaver, attested to this approach, noting that it was customary for the production team to prioritize subtle humor over belly laughs. While it may seem counterintuitive to remove jokes that generate significant laughter, this strategic decision ensured that Leave It to Beaver retained its sweet and unassuming essence. So, the next time you find yourself watching an episode, remember that the absence of thunderous laughter was intentional. By trimming the super funny moments, the show maintained its charm and authenticity, leaving viewers with a warm and nostalgic experience reminiscent of simpler times. Why the show ended. Numerous TV shows face the unfortunate fate of cancellation when their ratings plummet and profits dwindle. However, the trajectory for Leave It to Beaver seemed quite the opposite. Despite 6 successful seasons, the show's popularity continued to soar, if not surpass its earlier successes. Yet, the decision to conclude the show wasn't driven by declining ratings or financial setbacks. The pivotal reason behind the show's closure stemmed from Jerry Mathers, the show's star, making a significant life choice. As he transitioned into high school, Jerry decided to prioritize his education over his acting career. It was a commendable decision for a young individual, demonstrating foresight and maturity beyond his years. While the producers could have explored avenues to continue the show without Jerry Mathers, they recognized that his departure would irrevocably alter the dynamic that made Leave It to Beaver so beloved. Consequently, they made the bittersweet decision to bid farewell to the show after 6 remarkable years. Leave It to Beaver remains ingrained in American television history as one of the most beloved classic sitcoms. Reflecting on its legacy, one might find it surprising to learn that Jerry Mathers possessed extensive acting experience from the tender age of 5. Conversely, Tony Dow, who portrayed Wally, embarked on his acting journey with no prior experience, a testament to his natural talent and the show's knack for discovering raw talent. After Leave It to Beaver concluded its run, the cast and crew embarked on new endeavors, yet the show's popularity endured as subsequent generations discovered it on television reruns. Behind the scenes, the actors embarked on their own post-show adventures. Jerry Mathers, who portrayed the iconic Beaver Cleaver, sought to enlist in the U.S. Marine Corps, but faced rejection due to concerns that his fame might tarnish the Corps' image in case of any mishaps. Undeterred, Mathers found his calling in the Air Force National Guard instead. Meanwhile, Tony Dow, known for his portrayal of Wally Cleaver, encountered challenges in securing acting roles beyond his signature character. However, Dow persevered and transitioned into a successful career as a director. He remains grateful for the opportunities afforded to him by Leave It to Beaver, cherishing his memories of the show. Barbara Billingsley, immortalized as the quintessential TV mom June Cleaver, relished her portrayal of the beloved character. Even in the 1980s, she reprised her role for special TV appearances and a spin-off series. Despite the show's conclusion in 1963, its enduring popularity persists, with audiences continuing to enjoy it through reruns.
Some of the old-time Hollywood celebrities were into stuff you wouldn't believe, from having weird obsessions with scat
It is Austin.
to something as bizarre as an irrational fear for the color purple. There is no denying the fact that most of what you're about to be exposed to make absolutely no sense. Charles Laughton's weird diet. In his memoir, Full Service, My Adventures in Hollywood and the Sex Lives of the Stars, Scotty Bowers claims to have either slept with or arranged sexual liaisons for hundreds of the best-known celebrities during Hollywood's golden age. One of the most shocking stories involves British actor Charles Laughton. But that's not all. According to Bowers, Laughton once asked him to bring over a young male guest while his wife was out. When Bowers and the young man arrived, Laughton began making a sandwich. He carefully sliced up lettuce and tomatoes, arranged them on sourdough bread, added a bit of lemon juice, and sprinkled some salt and pepper. This is where it gets interesting. After a few minutes of prep work, Laughton took the bread slices in one hand, picked up a pot with the other, and asked the young man to follow him into the bathroom. But what happened next will shock you. Here's what Bowers describes. Charles was the first to return. He put the plate with the bread slices on the kitchen table. I could see that the lettuce and tomatoes had been lightly smeared with a light brown substance. Seconds later, Ted appeared in the kitchen. His erection was gone, and he was looking decidedly sheepish, perhaps even a trifle embarrassed. I stared at him curiously, and he pulled a face, hoping that Charles wouldn't notice. He pointed at the bread slices on the plate and then lightly patted his backside. And then, believe it or not, Laughton ate the sandwich. Ronald Reagan's obsession with young virgins. Ronald Reagan is often remembered more for his political career than his time in Hollywood, but back in the 1940s and 50s he was one of Tinseltown's leading men. But that's not all. One of the most cringe-inducing rumors about Reagan's Hollywood days comes from his co-star in the 1950 drama Louisa, Piper Laurie. She claims that the future GOP icon took her virginity when he was 39 years old, and she was just 18. But what happened next will shock you. In her memoir, Laurie writes that Reagan first seduced her on the set of their film Louisa, where he played her father. At first, Reagan seemed like a true gentleman. He even asked Laurie's mother for permission to take her on a date. Sounds charming, right? But instead of the glamorous evening Laurie had imagined, Reagan took both her and her mother to his house, where he cooked hamburger steak and salad. This is where it gets interesting. After dinner, things took a strange turn. Reagan led Laurie back to the bedroom. According to her, the actor was an insensitive show-off in bed. He bragged about how long he'd been erect, 40 whole minutes, and how much his condom had cost. But that's not all. Laurie also recounts that Reagan was far from a considerate lover. Not only did he fail to pleasure her, but when she mentioned her lack of an orgasm, his response was harsh and critical. According to her, he said, "There's something wrong with you that you should fix." Howard Hughes's extreme obsession with hygiene. Howard Hughes, the brilliant yet enigmatic tycoon, had a mind that worked in extraordinary ways. His achievements in aviation, film, and business were nothing short of legendary. But alongside his brilliance, there was a peculiar and relentless obsession that dominated his life: cleanliness. Imagine a man so consumed by the fear of germs that he would lock himself away in dark rooms for days, sometimes even weeks. Hughes turned his lavish homes into fortresses of solitude, meticulously sealed to keep out any potential contamination. The windows were often covered, creating a gloomy, almost eerie atmosphere, as if he were living in a perpetual twilight. Hughes's hand-washing routine was nothing short of ritualistic. Picture this. He would wash his hands repeatedly, scrubbing them until they were raw and sometimes even bleeding. It wasn't just a quick rinse. It was a painstaking process, as if he were trying to scrub away invisible threats. His fear of germs was so intense that he believed even the slightest contact could lead to illness or infection. But Hughes's obsession didn't stop at hand-washing. He went to extraordinary lengths to avoid human contact altogether. For instance, if he had to meet someone, he would often communicate through notes or intercom systems, avoiding face-to-face interactions. He would use tissues to touch objects and had a meticulous system for handling everyday items to ensure they remained uncontaminated. Hughes's peculiarities extended to his instructions to staff and associates. He once demanded that all canned food be meticulously washed and scrubbed before opening. Imagine the bewilderment of his staff as they followed these bizarre instructions, knowing that any deviation could trigger one of Hughes's infamous outbursts. Even when he was flying, Hughes couldn't escape his fears. His custom-built planes were designed with his germophobia in mind. He often flew alone or with minimal crew, ensuring that the aircraft remained as sterile as possible. The irony of an aviation pioneer afraid of the very air he conquered is striking, isn't it? Hughes's obsession with cleanliness and germs was a constant battle in his mind. Despite his towering intellect and achievements, he was trapped by his own fears. This relentless battle between his rational, inventive side and his irrational, obsessive side created a fascinating yet tragic figure. The man who soared to great heights in both the literal and metaphorical sense was, in many ways, grounded by his own mind. Mae West's astrology obsession. Mae West, a name synonymous with boldness and wit, was a star who dazzled both on and off the screen. But behind her larger-than-life persona and sultry quips lay a fascination that guided many of her choices: astrology. Mae West was deeply obsessed with astrology. This wasn't just a casual interest or a passing fancy, it was a central pillar of her decision-making process. Imagine a woman who, despite her confidence and unshakable self-assuredness, would not make any major life decisions without first consulting her astrologer. Whether it was a career move, a personal relationship, or even the timing of her day-to-day activities, the stars had to align for Mae. Her belief in astrology was so profound that it influenced her creative work. She wrote a play called The Constant Sinner, which was steeped in astrological themes. The narrative wasn't just a backdrop for her characters. It was interwoven with the celestial movements and zodiac signs that Mae believed so deeply in. This wasn't just art imitating life. It was life, love, and destiny dictated by the cosmos. Think about the confidence and assertiveness Mae West exuded in every role she played and every public appearance she made. Now imagine that same woman, with all her bravado, quietly consulting her astrologer in private, seeking guidance from the alignment of planets and stars. It's a striking contrast, isn't it? The idea that such a powerful figure would defer to celestial charts and predictions adds a fascinating layer to her already complex persona. Astrology wasn't just a hobby for Mae West, it was a way of life. She saw the patterns and signs as a roadmap, helping her navigate the tumultuous landscape of Hollywood and her personal life. This deep-rooted belief in the stars provided her with a sense of control and direction, a way to make sense of the often unpredictable nature of fame and fortune. Marlene Dietrich and collecting men's clothes. Beyond her screen persona, Marlene had an intriguing obsession that set her apart from her contemporaries, a fascination with men's clothing. This wasn't just a passing fancy or a quirky interest. It was a profound passion that influenced both her personal life and her public image. Dietrich didn't merely collect men's clothing, she wore it with a sense of ease and confidence that challenged the norms of her time. In an era when women were expected to adhere to strict fashion conventions, Dietrich's choice to don suits, trousers, and tailored shirts was nothing short of revolutionary. Picture her walking into a Hollywood event in a perfectly fitted tuxedo, her hair meticulously styled, and her makeup flawless. The image was striking and unforgettable, making a powerful statement about gender and fashion. She was one of the first women to popularize androgynous fashion in Hollywood. Her style wasn't about rejecting femininity, but about embracing a broader spectrum of identity. By wearing men's clothing, Dietrich played with societal expectations, blending masculinity and femininity in a way that was both provocative and liberating. She made it clear that clothing was an expression of self, not a strict adherence to gender norms. Dietrich's fascination with men's clothing went beyond the surface. She appreciated the craftsmanship, the structure, and the way these garments allowed her to move and present herself. Collecting these pieces became a hobby, a form of self-expression, and a way to assert her individuality. Imagine her private wardrobe, filled with an array of perfectly tailored suits, each piece carefully chosen and cherished. Her influence extended far beyond her personal collection. Dietrich's androgynous style inspired countless designers and fashion enthusiasts, paving the way for future generations to explore and embrace non-traditional fashion choices. She wasn't just a style icon. She was a pioneer who challenged the fashion industry's rigid boundaries. Peter Sellers' obsession against the color purple. Most people have typical fears like heights, snakes, or spiders, but Peter Sellers, he had a bizarre terror of the color purple. Now, Sellers' eccentricity wasn't the lovable, bumbling kind he often portrayed in his roles. It was far more chaotic and disturbing, making him a difficult person to be around. On film sets, Sellers was infamous for his explosive outbursts. Imagine him in a fit of rage, yelling at his wives, smashing dishes, and even brandishing a shotgun to vent his anger. His tantrums didn't stop there. He clashed with directors and producers, despite their higher status, and would often get lower-level staff fired if they crossed him. His erratic behavior was compounded by his vague racism and intense superstitions. One superstition in particular involved the famed director Vittorio De Sica. While they were working on After the Fox, Sellers saw De Sica berate a script girl for wearing purple. The director ominously declared that purple was the color of death. This statement profoundly impacted Sellers, who became convinced that the color purple could kill. From then on, Sellers' fear of purple dominated his actions. Any time he encountered the color, he'd fly into a panic, throwing tantrums and insisting it be removed. This irrational fear added yet another layer of unpredictability to an already volatile personality, making life around him a constant challenge. Charlie Chaplin's obsession with younger women. Charlie Chaplin, the legendary actor, filmmaker, and comedian, known for his iconic character, the Little Tramp, also had a much darker side to his personal life. Beyond the silver screen, Chaplin's relationships were the subject of much controversy, largely due to his well-known obsession with very young women. This fixation shaped his personal and professional life in ways that continue to spark debate. Chaplin's first marriage was to Mildred Harris in 1918, when he was 29 and she was just 16. Their relationship began when Harris was only 15, highlighting the significant age difference and Chaplin's preference for much younger partners. The marriage was short-lived, lasting only 2 years, but it set a precedent for Chaplin's future romantic endeavors. Following his divorce from Harris, Chaplin embarked on a series of relationships with teenage girls. His second marriage was to Lita Gray, who was 16 when they started their relationship and 18 when they married in 1924. Chaplin was 35 at the time. Their union was fraught with difficulties from the start. Gray's youth and inexperience clashed with Chaplin's controlling nature, leading to a tumultuous relationship that ended in a highly publicized and acrimonious divorce. The divorce proceedings revealed many sordid details about Chaplin's behavior, further cementing his controversial reputation. Despite the scandal, Chaplin continued to pursue young women. His third marriage was to Paulette Goddard, a rising star in Hollywood, who was 21 when they met, and Chaplin was 47. Though their marriage was kept relatively private and the age gap was not as stark as in his previous relationships, the pattern of significant age differences persisted. Chaplin's fourth and final marriage was to Una O'Neill, the daughter of playwright Eugene O'Neill. Una was just 18 when she married Chaplin, who was 54 at the time. This marriage, despite the age gap, proved to be the most stable and enduring of Chaplin's life. They remained together until Chaplin's death in 1977, and they had 8 children. Una's unwavering support and devotion seemed to bring Chaplin a semblance of the stability that had eluded him in his previous relationships. His preference for young women was not limited to his marriages. He was known to have numerous relationships with teenage girls throughout his life, often starting when the girls were still minors. This behavior, while not uncommon in the early 20th century, drew significant criticism and legal challenges. In one notable case, Chaplin faced a paternity suit from actress Joan Barry, who was 23 years younger than him. The case, which included allegations of coercion and manipulation, was widely covered by the media and further tarnished Chaplin's public image. The controversy surrounding Chaplin's relationships with young women has led to a complex legacy. On one hand, he is celebrated as a genius of early cinema, whose contributions to film and comedy are unparalleled. On the other hand, his personal life raises uncomfortable questions about the dynamics of power and exploitation. Chaplin's behavior reflects the broader societal attitudes of his time, where older men often pursued younger women, sometimes with dire consequences. Gloria Swanson's obsession with health and fasting. Gloria Swanson, one of Hollywood's most glamorous and enduring stars, was not only known for her striking beauty and acting prowess, but also for her intense dedication to health foods and fasting. Decades before the wellness industry became mainstream, Swanson was a pioneer in the realm of health and nutrition, turning her lifestyle into a fervent obsession that shaped her daily routines and public persona. Swanson's journey into the world of health foods and fasting began at a time when processed foods were becoming increasingly popular in America. Rejecting this trend, she delved into natural and organic eating habits, believing that what she consumed had a direct impact on her overall well-being and longevity. Her approach to diet was meticulous and uncompromising. She scrutinized every ingredient, ensuring that her meals were not only nutritious but also free from any artificial additives or preservatives. Her commitment to healthy foods extended beyond just eating organic produce. Swanson embraced a diet rich in raw vegetables, fruits, nuts, and seeds, long before such dietary choices became fashionable. She was particularly fond of juicing, often preparing fresh vegetable and fruit juices to maintain her energy and vitality. This dedication to a clean diet was not merely a fad for Swanson. It was a deeply ingrained lifestyle choice that she believed was essential for sustaining her health and beauty. In addition to her strict dietary habits, Swanson was a firm believer in the benefits of fasting. She would often embark on long fasts, abstaining from food for extended periods to cleanse her body and mind. These fasts were not just about physical health. Swanson saw them as a way to achieve mental clarity and spiritual renewal. Her fasting routines were rigorous, sometimes lasting several days, during which she would consume only water or freshly squeezed juices. This practice was unconventional and even controversial at the time, but Swanson was unwavering in her belief in its benefits. Swanson's obsession with health foods and fasting was also evident in her social interactions and public appearances. She often spoke about her dietary practices, sharing her knowledge and experiences with others. She became an advocate for healthy living, encouraging those around her to adopt similar habits. Her influence extended to her close circle of friends and colleagues in Hollywood, many of whom were inspired by her dedication and began to explore healthier lifestyles themselves. Her commitment to health was not without its challenges. Swanson faced skepticism and criticism from those who viewed her practices as extreme or unnecessary. However, she remained steadfast, confident in the knowledge that her choices were beneficial. Her dedication to health and wellness was a testament to her discipline and determination, qualities that also defined her illustrious career. Swanson's approach to health was holistic. She believed in the interconnectedness of physical, mental, and emotional well-being. This belief guided her lifestyle choices, from her diet and fasting routines to her emphasis on regular exercise and stress management. She practiced yoga and meditation, long before these practices became popular in the West, as part of her daily regimen to maintain balance and harmony in her life. Her obsession with health foods and fasting also influenced her work. Swanson often took on roles that reflected her personal beliefs, portraying characters who embodied strength, resilience, and a sense of well-being. Her off-screen persona, as a health-conscious and disciplined individual, became an integral part of her public image, distinguishing her from many of her contemporaries.
Hollywood's golden age wasn't so golden. Imagine your favorite star caked in week-old sweat, reusing unwashed costumes and dodging rats on set. This wasn't the exception. It was the norm. Glamour outside, filth behind. In the silent film era, Hollywood was all about speed, hygiene and safety, barely on the radar. Sets were cobbled together with reused materials, and cleanliness wasn't a priority. This chaos turned film productions into playgrounds for rats and cockroaches. These pests weren't just unwelcome. They were practically part of the crew, darting through props like they owned the place. Costumes didn't fare much better. Studios treated wardrobes like communal hand-me-downs. Cleaning them wasn't a priority. Iconic stars like Mary Pickford and Douglas Fairbanks wore outfits that had been through multiple productions. Sweat and grime built up over time, and spot cleaning was often the best anyone could do. Under those hot stage lights, actors had no choice but to grin and bear it, literally. Makeup was another nightmare. Personal makeup kits weren't a thing yet. Everyone shared the same jars of foundation, powders, and brushes, which were rarely cleaned. Bacteria spread easily, leading to breakouts, eye infections, and irritated skin. Even stars like Greta Garbo couldn't escape these side effects. Studios provided cheap, unsanitary products, leaving actors to deal with the consequences. Sets weren't any cleaner. Outdoor shoots were often in remote locations with no running water or proper restrooms. Indoor stages were worse, poorly ventilated and stifling under harsh lights, which encouraged mold growth. Productions involving animals added another layer of filth, as their waste was rarely cleaned up promptly. Actors had no room to complain. Studio heads like Louis B. Mayer and Carl Laemmle were more concerned with meeting deadlines than health concerns. Complaints could cost you your career. The show must go on wasn't motivational. It was a thinly veiled threat. By the late 1920s, the transition to sound brought minor improvements, but sanitation was still low on the list of priorities. The glamorous image of silent films hid a much dirtier reality, proving early Hollywood's charm had a decidedly grimy side, costume nightmares and shared wardrobes. Costumes in the 1930s and 1940s were the heart of Hollywood's magic. Stunning gowns, sharp suits, and intricate period outfits brought movies to life. But behind the scenes, wardrobe maintenance was a hygiene disaster. Studios saw costumes as investments, reusing them relentlessly with little thought to cleanliness. Even the biggest stars weren't spared. Joan Crawford and Bette Davis, icons of their time, often wore spot-cleaned outfits drenched in sweat from intense stage lights. Washing delicate fabrics like silk or sequins was considered too risky. Instead, costumes were steamed and sprayed with perfume to mask odors. This quick fix didn't remove bacteria, leaving actors stuck in musty, uncomfortable clothing. Extras had it worse. Historical epics like Gone with the Wind, 1939, required layers of elaborate costumes, corsets, petticoats, and military uniforms. These pieces were shared across productions and rarely cleaned. During Gone with the Wind, many extras suffered rashes and itching from unwashed undergarments. Studios brushed off complaints, showing how little they cared for the comfort of lower-tier workers. Animal costumes and furs were another nightmare. Popular in historical and fantasy films, they soaked up sweat and grime during long shoots. Washing them wasn't an option without ruining the material, so they turned into breeding grounds for bacteria. Actors wearing these costumes often described the smell as unbearable. Studios predictably ignored the complaints. Some stars fought back. Claudette Colbert, while filming It Happened One Night, 1934, refused to wear shared undergarments. She demanded freshly made items and used her star power to secure better treatment. Unfortunately, most actors, especially extras, lacked the clout to push for change. The lack of hygiene in costume departments was an open secret. For decades, glamorous outfits on screen hid the uncomfortable reality faced by those who wore them. It wasn't until unions began advocating for higher standards in the mid-20th century that real improvements were made. Until then, Hollywood magic came with a heavy and dirty price: makeup, mercury, and the health risks. Makeup in old Hollywood was both a blessing and a curse. It created the iconic looks that defined the era, but came with serious risks. Toxic ingredients and poor hygiene made it a health hazard for actors. The use of dangerous ingredients like lead and mercury was common. Lon Chaney, known for his roles in silent horror films like The Phantom of the Opera, 1925, relied on white face paint packed with lead. It gave him the ghostly look he needed but caused severe skin problems. Over time, the damage was permanent. Chaney, like most actors, accepted this as part of the job. Makeup tools were another issue. Brushes and sponges were shared without cleaning, making infections inevitable. Jean Harlow, the blonde bombshell of the 1930s, developed an eye infection during Dinner at 8, 1933, thanks to contaminated tools. Extras had it worse. They often used leftover products from the stars with zero regard for hygiene. One of the most shocking cases was Buddy Ebsen, cast as the Tin Man in The Wizard of Oz, 1939. His aluminum-based makeup caused severe respiratory issues, forcing him to leave the role. Instead of addressing the safety concerns, the studio simply replaced him. Jack Haley, his replacement, was given a paste version of the makeup. While safer than powder, it still caused discomfort. The message was clear: actors were replaceable. Safety wasn't a priority. Speaking out was risky. Actors who complained were labeled difficult, which could end their careers. It wasn't until the mid-20th century that regulations began addressing these dangers. By then, many stars had already paid the price. The flawless faces of old Hollywood hid a harsh reality. Beneath the glamour was an industry willing to sacrifice its stars' health for perfection. Those shimmering eyes and perfect lips came at a far greater cost than audiences ever realized. Dark side of hair departments. Hair departments in old Hollywood had one goal: perfection. But behind the glamorous styles, hygiene and safety often took a back seat. Stylists worked tirelessly to transform actors, but their methods were far from clean. Shared tools were a constant problem. Combs, brushes, and curling irons were rarely sanitized even when used on dozens of actors. Head lice outbreaks were common, especially among extras in big productions. During Cleopatra, 1963, extras complained of itching and scalp irritation from reused wigs and hairpieces. Leading actors got slightly better treatment, But infections were still a risk. Chemical hair treatments were brutal. Actresses like Rita Hayworth endured intense processes to meet Hollywood's beauty standards. Hayworth's signature red hair required frequent bleaching, leaving her scalp raw and her hair brittle. She later admitted it was painful, but felt it was necessary to keep her career alive. Many actresses suffered in silence, knowing they had little choice. Wigs and hairpieces added to the misery. These were reused across productions with minimal cleaning. Judy Garland, while filming The Wizard of Oz, 1939, had to wear a tight wig cap to hide her natural hairline. It caused severe irritation, but her complaints were dismissed as trivial. Actors rarely had control over their hairstyles. Studios dictated every detail of their appearance. Refusing a treatment or style risked being labeled difficult, a career-ending accusation at the time. Change didn't come quickly. It wasn't until unions stepped in that hair departments began improving hygiene and safety. Before that, actors bore the brunt of unsafe practices, all in the name of looking flawless on screen. The iconic hairstyles of old Hollywood dazzled audiences, but they came at a cost. Beneath the perfectly coiffed waves and glamorous updos was an industry willing to sacrifice its stars' health for the sake of beauty, water woes, and bathing blues. In early Hollywood, basic hygiene was a luxury, especially during outdoor shoots. Clean water and proper facilities were often ignored in the rush to finish productions. Cast and crew endured uncomfortable and unsanitary conditions, though these hardships were rarely acknowledged publicly. One infamous example was the filming of Ben-Hur, 1925. Shot in the sweltering Italian desert, actors and extras spent days in heavy, unwashed costumes under relentless heat. With no proper bathing facilities, sweat and dirt built up quickly. Reports described extras developing severe rashes and infections from the combination of grime and tight garments. The studio's focus stayed on the epic chariot race scenes, offering little support to those suffering on set. Water scenes were no better. During the Ten Commandments, 1923, extras stood for hours in stagnant pools to simulate Moses parting the Red Sea. The water, filled with bacteria, led to skin infections and other health problems. Studios brushed off complaints, prioritizing dramatic visuals over worker safety. With no access to showers, actors and crew improvised. Perfumes and powders became survival tools, especially for actresses expected to look glamorous at all times. Carole Lombard, a 1930s star, was known to carry scented powders in her bag to combat the effects of long, sweaty days. Unfortunately, these quick fixes barely masked the discomfort. The lack of clean water wasn't just gross, it was dangerous. Illnesses spread rapidly on crowded sets, with stomach bugs and skin infections becoming routine. Studios rarely addressed these outbreaks, leaving workers to manage on their own. Even into the 1940s, hygiene on outdoor shoots remained an afterthought. Profit and efficiency always came first. It wasn't until unions fought for better standards that portable restrooms and water stations became standard. By then, countless actors and extras had already suffered for the sake of Hollywood's grand illusions. Plight of extras and background. Extras in early Hollywood had it rough. While stars enjoyed some level of comfort, background actors were treated as disposable. These workers were essential for grand spectacles like historical epics, but faced the harshest conditions. Hygiene standards? Non-existent. Studios didn't care about their well-being. Films like Quo Vadis 1951 and Ben-Hur 1959 relied on thousands of extras. These extras spent hours crammed into poorly ventilated holding areas, often without proper restrooms or water. On Ben-Hur, reports described extras collapsing from heat exhaustion. Heavy costumes, long hours, and scorching sun made it unbearable. The studio's response? Push through to stay on schedule. The set of Spartacus, 1960, wasn't any better. Extras endured grueling shifts under blazing lights with few breaks. Clean water? Rare. Meals? Sure, but no way to wash hands before eating. Food poisoning outbreaks were common. Complaints went ignored, as deadlines always came first. Then there was The Ten Commandments, 1956. Extras playing Israelites walked barefoot across burning desert sand. Burns and blisters were inevitable, but no relief was provided. When extras protested, they were told to keep working or leave. Studios made it clear, extras were replaceable. The inequality didn't stop there. Wardrobe departments handed extras old, unwashed costumes, while stars received fresh, tailored outfits. Makeup and hairstyling were reserved for lead actors. Extras were left to fend for themselves, highlighting the stark divide between the stars and the background players. The public never saw these struggles. Studios carefully maintained Hollywood's glamorous image, ensuring the realities faced by extras stayed hidden. It wasn't until unions stepped in during the mid-20th century that conditions improved. Extras finally gained access to clean facilities, fair treatment, and basic protections. Despite their invisibility, extras were the backbone of Hollywood's biggest productions. They filled the screens and brought epic stories to life, often at great personal cost. Pest problems on set. Pests were an ongoing nightmare on early Hollywood sets. Studios spared no expense on elaborate sets and big-budget films, but skimped on cleanliness. Rats, cockroaches, and fleas thrived, turning sets into breeding grounds for discomfort and disease. Animal-heavy productions were the worst offenders. The Big Trail, 1930, with its many livestock scenes, faced constant sanitation issues. Horses and oxen left waste everywhere, attracting flies and rodents. Cleaning crews couldn't keep up, leaving cast and crew to endure the stench and pests. Actors often worked uncomfortably close to these unsanitary conditions. Mutiny on the Bounty, 1935, was another pest-filled production. Filmed on a replica ship, the set became overrun with rats. Actors joked about their furry co-stars, but the humor wore thin when the rodents began contaminating food supplies. Their constant scurrying made scenes difficult to film and added an extra layer of frustration to an already challenging shoot. Indoor sets weren't safe either. Studios like Warner Brothers often battled cockroach infestations, especially in wardrobe storage areas. Costumes, left hanging for months between productions, became pest hotels. More than one actor found an unwelcome critter in their clothes right before filming. Fleas were another issue, especially in historical epics. Wool costumes combined with animals created the perfect storm. Extras frequently complained of itching and flea bites with little sympathy from the studios. Addressing the problem wasn't a priority. As long as filming stayed on schedule, comfort didn't matter. These infestations revealed just how little studios cared about worker health and safety. The focus stayed firmly on production deadlines. Even when actors and crew raised concerns, pest control remained an afterthought. By the mid-20th century, unions pushed for better conditions, including regular pest control on sets. But for decades, countless cast and crew members had already suffered through the itching, scratching, and outright disgust caused by Hollywood's pest problems. All for the sake of movie magic. Celebrity hygiene habits exposed. Hollywood's golden era sold perfection. Stars were glamorous, untouchable, and seemingly flawless. But behind the scenes, their hygiene habits told a very different story. Studios worked overtime to hide these quirks, preserving the illusion of untarnished beauty. Take Clark Gable, for example. Known as one of Hollywood's greatest leading men, he had a not-so-charming secret: bad breath. The culprit? Poor dental hygiene and gum disease. During Gone with the Wind, 1939, Vivien Leigh reportedly dreaded kissing scenes with him and complained about it to the crew. Still, the studio brushed off the issue to keep Gable's heartthrob image intact. Marilyn Monroe, the epitome of beauty, had her own surprising habits. She often slept in her makeup, rarely taking it off after long days. This led to frequent breakouts, requiring makeup artists to work overtime to conceal blemishes before filming. Thanks to studio-backed beauty teams, her on-screen glow remained untouched by her off-screen routines. Charlie Chaplin, known for his genius, wasn't so keen on personal grooming. He was said to skip baths during busy shoots, focusing entirely on his work. While his behind-the-scenes habits were less than pristine, audiences never saw it. His lovable tramp character stayed as charming as ever. Even Greta Garbo, a symbol of elegance, dealt with hygiene struggles. Low-quality makeup products of the time worsened her skin problems. Combined with her aversion to strict skincare routines, it wasn't an easy fix. Studios provided her with exclusive treatments to keep her screen image flawless. These anecdotes reveal the gap between Hollywood's polished image and its stars' real lives. Studios controlled every detail of public perception, ensuring audiences saw only the glamour. While these habits might seem shocking now, they remind us that even old Hollywood's icons were human. Behind the glitz, they were just people with quirks and flaws. The carefully crafted mystique kept audiences in awe, never questioning the less glamorous truths. When standards began to change. By the 1950s and 1960s, Hollywood finally started cleaning up its act, literally. Decades of unsanitary practices tolerated in the name of profit were being challenged. Unions, advocacy groups, and a growing focus on worker rights pushed studios toward change. Progress was slow, but it was significant. One big shift came in makeup departments. Shared tools like brushes, sponges, and powder jars were replaced with personal makeup kits. Artists were required to sanitize their tools and create individualized kits for each actor. This simple change dramatically reduced the skin infections and eye irritations that had plagued stars for years. Wardrobe departments followed suit. Costumes were no longer treated as sacred relics. Studios began using fabrics that could withstand regular cleaning. Disposable undergarments became standard, sparing actors the awkwardness of sharing intimate garments. Stars like Audrey Hepburn and Elizabeth Taylor used their influence to demand these upgrades, helping set a new standard for hygiene. Set facilities also improved. Portable restrooms, clean water stations, and shaded rest areas became common on outdoor shoots. Productions like Lawrence of Arabia, 1962, filmed in remote deserts, took extra steps to ensure cast and crew had access to clean and functional facilities. Conditions were far from perfect, but compared to the days of buckets and barren landscapes, it was a major step forward. Unions like the Screen Actors Guild, SAG, led the charge. SAG introduced rules requiring studios to provide sanitary conditions and protect workers' health. These new standards extended to extras and background actors, ensuring even the most overlooked workers were treated better. Despite the progress, challenges remained. Pests, illnesses, and grueling hours still tested cast and crew, but Hollywood had come a long way from its early days of filth and neglect. The reforms of the mid-20th century laid the groundwork for a cleaner, safer industry. Lights, camera, and odor? Hollywood's brightest stars had some of the worst hygiene habits, and we're about to expose them all. From Clark Gable's dental dilemmas to Lana Turner's rare showers and even Marlon Brando's notorious on-set stench, join us as we pull back the curtain on Tinseltown's smelly secrets. It's time to get real about Hollywood's dirtiest legends. Get ready to be transported back to the golden age of cinema, where the allure often masked some very human flaws. We'll share jaw-dropping stories and intimate details that reveal a side of these stars you've never seen before. Clark Gable. Known for his role in Gone with the Wind, he had a reputation for bad breath. Co-star Vivien Leigh, who played Scarlett O'Hara, often complained about his dental hygiene. Leigh once said, "Kissing Clark Gable in Gone with the Wind was not that exciting. His dentures smelled something awful." This complaint was not isolated. Numerous accounts from those who worked with Gable mentioned his persistent bad breath. The issue stemmed from Gable's dental problems. By the time he starred in Gone with the Wind, he had lost most of his teeth. He wore dentures, which contributed to the odor. His dentist, Charles Pincus, created special dentures for him, but they didn't entirely solve the problem. Despite this, Gable's charm and acting skills kept him in high demand. On the set of Mutiny on the Bounty, co-star Charles Laughton also struggled with Gable's breath. Laughton reportedly said, "I can't stand the man's foul breath." This caused tension during filming, but it was tolerated due to Gable's star power. In 1958, Gable's dental issues were discussed in an interview with his close friend, actor Frank Capra. Capra mentioned that Clark was a wonderful guy, but his breath could knock you over. This was a known fact among Hollywood insiders, yet it never affected Gable's career. Gable's hygiene issues extended beyond his breath. He had a reputation for not bathing regularly. Actress Loretta Young, who starred with him in Call of the Wild, found his lack of cleanliness challenging. Young recalled that Clark was rugged and handsome, but he had a distinct odor that was hard to ignore. His hygiene habits didn't change much over the years. On the set of The Misfits, co-star Marilyn Monroe and director John Huston had to deal with his smell. Despite these hygiene issues, Gable remained a beloved figure in Hollywood. His charisma and talent overshadowed his personal habits. He continued to receive roles and accolades throughout his career. In 1960, during the filming of The Misfits, Gable suffered a heart attack, leading to his death shortly after. Even then, the focus remained on his legendary career rather than his hygiene. His legacy as the king of Hollywood remained intact. Joan Crawford. An iconic actress known for films like Mildred Pierce, she had a reputation for being a cleanliness fanatic, yet rumors circulated about her personal odor. Despite her obsession with cleanliness, Crawford's body odor was a subject of whispered conversations among co-stars and crew members. Crawford was known for her meticulous grooming habits. She reportedly took ice-cold baths to maintain her skin's firmness and had a rigorous skincare routine. However, her insistence on using heavy, musky perfumes to cover any natural body odor often had the opposite effect. Co-star Bette Davis famously commented, "She reeks of Chanel No. 5 and sweat." Despite her efforts to stay immaculate, Crawford's intense body odor became noticeable during long shooting days. On the set of Whatever Happened to Baby Jane, her co-star Bette Davis found it challenging to work closely with her. Davis mentioned in a private letter that Joan's smell was unbearable after a few hours on set, describing it as a mix of heavy perfume and something else she couldn't quite identify. Crew members also had stories about Crawford's hygiene. An anonymous crew member from Johnny Guitar recalled, "Joan was always spraying perfume, but it didn't mask the fact that she didn't shower every day." This statement reflected a common sentiment among those who worked with her. Despite these issues, Crawford's professionalism and talent overshadowed her hygiene problems. She was known for being demanding and maintaining high standards on set. Crawford's obsessive cleaning habits extended to her home life. Friends and family reported that she would scrub her house obsessively, sometimes to the point of damaging her skin. Her daughter, Christina Crawford, wrote in her memoir, "Mommy dearest, Mother would clean until her hands bled, but she rarely took the same care with her own body." Marlon Brando. Renowned for his roles in A Streetcar Named Desire and The Godfather, he was not just famous for his acting. Brando had a well-known reputation for poor hygiene. Co-stars and directors frequently commented on his lack of cleanliness, which became an integral part of his off-screen persona. Brando's hygiene issues were apparent on the set of A Streetcar Named Desire. Co-star Vivien Leigh, who played Blanche Dubois, found it difficult to work with him due to his hygiene. Leigh remarked, "Marlon never seemed to care about cleanliness. It was tough to share close scenes with him." This sentiment was echoed by others who worked with him. Director Elia Kazan, who directed Brando in both A Streetcar Named Desire and On the Waterfront, also noted his hygiene habits. Kazan mentioned in an interview that Marlon was a brilliant actor, but he had no regard for personal hygiene, and his natural smell was often overpowering on set. Despite this, Kazan continued to work with Brando, recognizing his immense talent. Brando's hygiene became a notorious part of his method of acting. During the filming of The Wild One, he reportedly wore the same costume for the entire shoot, rarely washing it. Co-star Mary Murphy said, "Marlon would stay in character all day, even if it meant not bathing or changing clothes. It added to his authenticity, but it wasn't pleasant for the rest of us." The issue persisted throughout his career. On the set of The Godfather, his co-stars had similar experiences. James Caan, who played Sonny Corleone, once joked that Marlon would show up on set smelling like he had just rolled out of bed, adding that it was part of his charm. Despite these complaints, Brando's performances continued to receive critical acclaim. Brando's personal life also reflected his casual attitude toward hygiene. He was known for his unkempt appearance and disregard for social norms. In a 1973 interview with Rolling Stone, he admitted, "I never saw the point in showering every day. It's a waste of water and time." This nonchalant approach endeared him to some but alienated others. Even in his later years, Brando's hygiene habits remained unchanged. On the set of Apocalypse Now, director Francis Ford Coppola struggled with Brando's behavior, including his lack of cleanliness. Coppola recounted that Marlon was difficult in many ways, including his hygiene, but his performance was worth the trouble. Brando's hygiene issues did not significantly impact his career. His talent and charisma overshadowed his personal habits. He continued to receive accolades and remained a sought-after actor throughout his life. His roles in The Godfather and Last Tango in Paris solidified his status as a Hollywood legend. Public perception of Brando remained largely positive. Fans admired his rebellious spirit and dedication to his craft. The media often focused on his acting prowess and controversial statements rather than his hygiene. Bette Davis. As an icon of classic Hollywood, she was known for her intense performances and strong personality. However, Davis also had a reputation for poor personal hygiene, primarily due to her heavy smoking habit. Her smoking led to persistent bad breath, which became a common complaint among her co-stars. Davis was a notorious chain smoker, often seen with a cigarette in hand both on and off the set. This habit contributed to her bad breath, which was frequently mentioned by those who worked closely with her. Co-star George Brent, who appeared with Davis in several films, once remarked that Bette was a tremendous actress, but her breath was quite overpowering. Her smoking was not just a minor issue, it was a significant part of her daily life. Davis smoked up to 4 packs of cigarettes a day. This constant smoking not only affected her breath, but also left a lingering smell on her clothes and in her hair. On the set of All About Eve, co-star Ann Baxter had to endure Davis's bad breath during their numerous close scenes. Baxter later recalled that working with Bette was a great experience, but it was challenging at times because of her smoking, as the smell was always there. Her personal assistant, Catherine Cermak, who worked with Davis during the latter part of her career, also mentioned her hygiene habits in her memoir. Cermak wrote, "Bette was particular about many things, but her smoking habit was something she never addressed. It was part of who she was." Despite these hygiene issues, Davis's career was filled with accolades and awards. She won 2 Academy Awards for Best Actress for her roles in Dangerous, 1935, and Jezebel, 1938, and received 10 nominations in total. Her powerful performances and commanding presence on screen overshadowed any personal flaws. Davis's hygiene issues were not widely known to the public during her lifetime. The media focused more on her professional achievements and personal dramas rather than her smoking habit and its effects. This allowed her to maintain a strong public image as a glamorous and talented star. In her later years, Davis's smoking took a toll on her health. She suffered a stroke in 1983, which affected her appearance and speech. Despite her health issues, Davis continued to work, making television appearances and writing her memoirs. Lana Turner. As a glamorous star known for films like The Postman Always Rings Twice and Peyton Place, she was one of Hollywood's most alluring actresses. Despite her glamorous on-screen persona, Turner had a reputation for inconsistent personal hygiene, which became a point of discussion among her co-stars and those who worked closely with her. Turner's hygiene habits were influenced by her demanding career and personal struggles. She often neglected regular bathing, relying heavily on perfume to mask body odor. Her personal assistant, Beverly Adland, who was also a close confidant, mentioned in her memoir, Lana, the Lady, the Legend, the Truth, that Turner sometimes went days without a bath. On the set of The Postman Always Rings Twice, co-star John Garfield noticed Turner's hygiene issues. Garfield, known for his straightforwardness, reportedly commented to a friend, "Lana is stunning on screen, but off screen she sometimes smells like she hasn't bathed in days. The perfume can only do so much." Turner's heavy use of makeup also contributed to her hygiene problems. She often slept with her makeup on to save time in the morning, which led to skin issues and an overall lack of cleanliness. Makeup artist Del Armstrong, who worked with Turner on several films, noted that Lana's skin suffered because she rarely took off her makeup at night, as she was always in a rush and didn't prioritize proper hygiene. Despite these issues, Turner's talent and beauty made her a beloved figure in Hollywood. She was nominated for an Academy Award for Best Actress for her role in Peyton Place and continued to receive praise for her performances throughout her career. Her charisma and screen presence often overshadowed her personal flaws. Publicly, Turner's hygiene habits were not widely known. The media focused on her film career, numerous marriages, and her dramatic personal life, including the infamous stabbing incident involving her daughter, Cheryl Crane. This selective coverage helped maintain her glamorous image. Greta Garbo. As the enigmatic star of films like Anna Karenina and Camille, she was known for her beauty and mystique. However, behind her glamorous image, Garbo had a reputation for poor personal hygiene, which became a point of contention for those who worked closely with her. Garbo was famously reclusive and avoided the public eye as much as possible. Her aversion to socializing extended to her personal hygiene habits. Co-star John Gilbert, who worked with her in several silent films, mentioned Garbo's hygiene in private conversations. Garbo's hygiene habits were influenced by her desire for privacy and her minimalist lifestyle. She often avoided the studio's makeup and wardrobe departments, preferring to handle her own grooming. This led to less than ideal hygiene, as noted by those around her. Director Clarence Brown, who directed Garbo in several films, recalled in an interview, "Greta was a perfectionist in her work, but she paid little attention to her personal cleanliness. She believed in natural beauty, even if it meant not showering regularly." Garbo's reclusive nature meant that she often neglected regular bathing and laundry. Her maid, who worked for her in her later years, noted in her memoir that Garbo would wear the same clothes for days and rarely did laundry. Miss Garbo valued her privacy above all else. She didn't like people fussing over her, including with hygiene, her maid wrote. Despite her hygiene issues, Garbo's talent and screen presence were undeniable. She received an Academy Award nomination for Best Actress for her role in Camille and continued to captivate audiences with her performances. Her reclusive nature and lack of personal care became part of her mystique, adding to her allure. Publicly, Garbo's hygiene habits were not well known. The media and her fans focused on her enigmatic persona and her memorable roles. This selective coverage helped maintain her status as a Hollywood legend. Her famous line, "I want to be alone," encapsulated her desire for privacy and contributed to her enduring mystique. Ava Gardner. Celebrated for her beauty and talent in films like The Killers and Mogambo, she was also known for her lackadaisical approach to personal hygiene. Despite her glamorous public image, those who worked closely with Gardner often remarked on her infrequent bathing and other hygiene issues. Gardner's hygiene habits were a result of her carefree lifestyle. She often preferred to live in the moment rather than adhere to strict grooming routines. Frank Sinatra, her third husband, once joked about her hygiene. In his memoir, Sinatra mentioned that Ava was a free spirit who didn't let things like regular baths get in the way of her fun. On the set of Mogambo, co-star Clark Gable noticed Gardner's less-than-perfect hygiene. Gable, who had his own hygiene issues, reportedly commented to a friend that Ava was stunning, but she didn't seem to care much for bathing. This was not an isolated observation. Other co-stars and crew members shared similar experiences. Gardner's makeup artist, Del Armstrong, who worked with her on several films, recalled in an interview, "Ava was one of the most beautiful women in Hollywood, but she didn't prioritize cleanliness. She would sometimes come to the set without having washed her hair for days." Despite this, Armstrong admired Gardner's natural beauty and ability to captivate audiences. Gardner's hygiene problems were not widely known to the public. Her fans adored her for her stunning looks and passionate performances. The media focused on her tumultuous love life and glamorous image, rarely touching upon her personal hygiene. This selective coverage helped maintain her status as a Hollywood icon. Gardner's lifestyle was also influenced by her heavy drinking and late-night partying. She was known for her love of nightlife and often stayed out until the early hours of the morning. This contributed to her lack of a regular hygiene routine. In her autobiography, Ava, My Story, Gardner admitted that she loved to party and live freely, and sometimes hygiene took a backseat to fun. Charlie Chaplin. As the iconic star of silent films such as The Tramp and City Lights, he was revered for his comedic genius and pioneering contributions to cinema. However, behind the scenes, Chaplin had a reputation for poor personal hygiene, which sometimes made working with him difficult for his colleagues. Chaplin's hygiene habits were influenced by his intense focus on his work. He was known for being a perfectionist, often spending long hours on set, which left little time for personal care. Actress Paulette Goddard, who starred alongside Chaplin in Modern Times and was also his wife for a few years, mentioned in interviews that Chaplin's dedication to his craft often overshadowed his attention to hygiene. During the filming of The Great Dictator, Chaplin's co-stars noticed his lack of cleanliness. Jack Oakey, who played Mussolini in the film, recalled in his autobiography, Jack Oakey's Double Takes, that Chaplin's hygiene was a common topic of conversation. Chaplin's hygiene issues extended to his dental care. His close friend and collaborator, Douglas Fairbanks, noted that Chaplin often had bad breath. Fairbanks once joked, "Charlie could light up a room with his smile, but you wouldn't want to be too close when he did." Despite these personal hygiene issues, Chaplin's talent and charisma ensured his continued success in Hollywood. His films were groundbreaking, and his performances left a lasting impact on the industry. He received numerous accolades throughout his career, including an honorary Academy Award in 1972 for his contributions to film. Chaplin's personal life was also marked by his hygiene habits. His son, Charles Chaplin Jr., wrote in his memoir, My Father, Charlie Chaplin, about his father's casual approach to personal cleanliness. Chaplin Jr. noted that his dad was always so engrossed in his work that personal hygiene was an afterthought, and he didn't mind skipping a shower if it meant perfecting a scene. Publicly, Chaplin's hygiene issues were not well known. The media and his fans focused more on his cinematic achievements and less on his personal habits. This allowed Chaplin to maintain his image as a beloved figure in the entertainment industry. Rita Hayworth. Known for her roles in classics like Gilda and Covergirl, she was a stunning beauty and one of Hollywood's top stars during the 1940s and 1950s. However, despite her glamorous appearance, Hayworth had a reputation for inconsistent personal hygiene, particularly related to her hair care. Hayworth's most famous feature was her thick, luxurious red hair, which became an iconic symbol of her allure. However, maintaining such a trademark look required considerable effort, and Hayworth often skipped regular washing to keep her hair styled and camera-ready. According to her hairdresser, Helen Hunt, who worked with Hayworth for many years, Rita's hair was her crowning glory, but she didn't wash it frequently. She believed that washing it too often would ruin the style. Her co-star in Gilda, Glenn Ford, noticed Hayworth's approach to hair care. Ford mentioned in a private conversation that Rita's hair was always perfect on screen, but off-screen, you could tell she hadn't washed it in days, considering it a small price to pay for that stunning look. In addition to her hair care habits, Hayworth's personal hygiene was influenced by her busy schedule and numerous health issues. She often struggled with arthritis, which made daily routines, including bathing, challenging. Her daughter, Yasmin Aga Khan, wrote in her memoir, Rita Hayworth, a Memoir, about her mother's health struggles and how they affected her personal care. Khan noted, My mother's arthritis made it hard for her to do simple tasks. There were days when she just couldn't manage to take a bath. Hayworth's hygiene issues also extended to her living conditions. During the height of her career, she lived in luxurious homes, but her housekeeping habits were less meticulous. Friends and visitors often noted the disarray in her living spaces.